evening. I'd like to continue our Harwich Board of Selectmen meeting for November 18th, 2019. We opened the meeting at 6:15, then went into executive session in which we discussed strategy sessions in respect to collective bargaining for an HEA contract. So it's initial discussions getting ready for the contract season upcoming. We then left the executive session, and now we've reopened our general session. I'd like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And let me remind you that we have an open meeting law, which you are hereby informed that the town will be video and audio taping as well as broadcasting this public meeting. In addition, anyone in the audience who plans to video or audio tape this meeting must notify the chairman prior to the start of the meeting. Is anyone interested in doing so? If not, we'll move to weekly briefing. Joe?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to you, members of the board. There's a slight change or update to the construction schedule as is presented currently on our website, and it deals with activity that's occurring this week, so I'm going to spend a little bit more time talking about the actions of this week and then get to the 2 additional weeks for the look ahead. For the week of November 18th through November 22nd, Mainline Sewer Crew Number 1 is continuing the installation on Route 39, west from Spencer's Trace. And as we all know, the detours are still in place there. The Mainline Sewer Crew Number 2 continues installation work on Route 137, again necessitating a detour, and I'll get more into that in a moment, Mr. Chairman. But regarding that second crew, we did receive a request from the contractor, Robert B. Hour, to see if the town was agreeable to extending the hours of operation. The hours of operation that have been agreed upon over the last month are typically Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. They have requested, and I have vetted with staff, to extend those hours this week for Tuesday, November 19th, Wednesday, November 20th, and Thursday, November 21st only until 7:30 p.m., specifically at the intersection of Southwest Drive and Route 137. I spoke with Charlie Sumner, Griffin Ryder, our engineer, Dan Pelletier, water, wastewater, as well as Abby Hour and, I don't know if I already mentioned Charlie Sumner, but we talked about, Tony Benilla at CDM Smith. Essentially, all parties agreed that there are going to be occasions where they feel it's necessary and prudent to expand the hours when they're dealing with, mostly with intersections with the installation of deep manholes, and that's exactly what's going to be proposed for Southwest and Route 137 this week. They expect that they should get it done within the 3 days, certainly no more than the 3 days. It would not impact Friday, and they would not expect to do this again until they reach another critical intersection of that. It's my understanding that these requests, they have a procedure in place whereby the contractor notifies Charlie Sumner, Charlie notifies administration, and usually there's a response. I wanted to take an ounce of prevention and notify the board. That was my email to you all, just explaining the situation. My recommendation is that we grant them the extension, because otherwise we'd be looking at significant work, perhaps prolonged in that area. It's simply not enough time for them to get to the depths they need to get to for these manholes. And it's going to be, like I said, not a regular occurrence, but an occurrence that relates to intersections.
Yeah. Is there any comments for Joe? Southwest is how I get out of my neighborhood, and I couldn't get out tonight. I had to go around the back way. So for me personally, shorter is better than longer days. But,
Yeah.
Is it, do we?
Oh, you have a conflict of interest. You can't vote.
True.
So the standard procedure is typically that it's done administratively within staff.
Yeah.
However, I was not going to be so brazen as to do
And I
that the
don't
first
think
time
you
without
need-
your knowledge.
I think we have a consensus to move ahead with that.
Sure.
And thanks for the information.
Sure.
We do appreciate it.
And then we will update the website. We'll also use Charlie's prepared by neighbors that are directly impacted, as well as updating Facebook. For next week, the 2-week look ahead, we're now in the week of November 25th. Again, there will not be any work done on Thanksgiving or the day after on that Friday. Mainline sewer crew number 1 will continue the installation on Route 39 west from Spencer's Trace, working more on service and sideline stubs. Mainline sewer crew number 2 is commencing installation on Herndon, 3 days only. It's my understanding that, given the holiday week, they're trying to ramp down the major work for that week, given and everything else. Detours will be in place in some areas, but hopefully we'll see the holiday week, some easing up on some of the detours, but we'll know more about that at the construction meeting tomorrow. And then the 3-week look ahead, mainline sewer crew number 1, continue installation on Route 39. Spencer's Trace, service and sideline stubs, commencing installation on Old Heritage Way, and sewer crew number 2 resumes work on installation on Route 137, and that will, again, necessitate detours on Route 137. Again, we'll update the website for all that information.
Thank you. If I may, the concern I've been getting recently are the detours. I don't think there's much you can do about that, but I would ask just be sure that the signs are always there. I think sometimes they get knocked out of place and it confuses people. And I would ask it, they reevaluate the detouring all continually to be sure it's most efficient.
Yeah, we'll have our meeting tomorrow. We'll certainly bring that up.
Hey, Michael?
And if we could try and get ahead of contract 2, they're gonna hit the ground, I imagine, running. What's that gonna do to the traffic pattern in East Harwich? There's one road detour now from the Rotary, Old Queen Anne Road, heading into Chatham. And Robert Howard is doing work on the 2 side streets, about halfway down that road before you hit that corner, which has been holding up traffic.
Sure.
So if we could try and get a handle on what's actually gonna happen out in East Harwich when the other contractor comes in, that would be helpful.
Sure, understood. I had a conversation with Charlie Sumner today, generally about that. I don't want to speak for Charlie, and I know he's presiding over town meeting as we speak right now in Brewster. But he has a plan in place, reaching out to a lot of the business owners, certainly in advance of any work there in East Harwich as it extends that way. But certainly we'll be mindful of, now getting to the point of coordinating the 2 different contractors in that area.
Thank you. Any other comments for Joe on this? Okay. Thank you, Joe, again, and we'll move then to a consent agenda.
Public comment announcement?
Public consent. Thank you, Michael. We're in a hurry to get out of here, I guess. Take your time, Jamie.
Hi, Jamie Goodwin, Channel 18. I'm here tonight on behalf of the emergency management team for the town of Harwich. We recently had a tornado, and during our after action meeting at the public safety building in July, a lot of us came together and decided that we could have done better. So emergency alert system, and it went live Friday. Today is the first day that you can sign up for new emergency alerts. I worked with Wellesley Marsh, Dave LeBlanc, Kevin Considine, Lee Culliver, and Foster Banford on this project. You can also sign up for additional alerts like water department alerts, police detours, beach updates, community center events, cultural center events, and employment opportunities. You can do this by going to www.harwich-ma.regroup.com, and I will have these available in this room today. We will also be doing PSAs on Channel 18, social media posts on the Channel 18 Facebook, the police department Facebook, and the fire department Facebook. We're hoping to get a lot of people signed up for this new emergency alert system before the winter weather hits us.
Thank you, Jamie. Will the link be on the general website? So if I go on that, that'll pop up to give me a chance to go to regroup?
As of 6:30 this evening, it was on news and announcements. So if you're subscribed to get all those alerts from the website, you will get a link that will prompt you to sign up for these alerts. It's on the emergency management page, and it will be at the top of the town website for quite some time. We're hoping to get a lot of people signed up. So if you could just share that, and I will probably announce it at the next couple Selectmen's meetings.
Really, that's great, because that was one of our big concerns after the tornado last time, walking around, figuring out how we could notify people.
Right. You have the option to get text messages, email alerts, phone messages, and if you download, there's an app that you could download that will send push notifications right to your phone, Android and iPhone. There was something else I wanted to mention. It's escaping me at this time. No, that's it.
You can come up again when you.
Yeah, thank you.
Remember. Anyone else for public comment? I have a comment. Sure.
My name's Gary Conroy, 235 Bay Road. I'm here to talk about the town administrator position. And a group of concerned citizens would like to have some input into the selection of our next town administrator. The next few years will certainly have an impact on future generations who work, live, and vacation in our wonderful community. While our challenges seem overwhelming at times, we believe Harwich and its leaders can navigate the next decade with much success. Our questions regarding, our first question regards process of selecting our next town administrator. What does the time frame of the selection and appointment process look like? Will the town hire a temporary administrator? How will the board communicate and keep the town updated on their search? Will a search committee be formed to help the board develop a list of candidates and to provide another layer of input into the selection of the administrator? Additionally, there's a person that many of us know who has the capacity and experience to be a highly successful town administrator. His name is Leo Kukunis. Leo would bring many qualities and much experience to town government and could hit the ground running. As you know, he served over 8 years on the Finance Commission, was a charter member of the Capital Outlay Committee, where he served for 6 years, was chairman of the Barnstable County Commission for 2 years and served for 4 years, was a member of the Assembly of for 6 years, is currently president of the Cape and Vineyard Co-op and has been a member for 6 years, is a successful business owner-operator, a family man, and has lived in Harwich since 1982. His love of Harwich is undeniable. As you can see, Leo has a background and a resume that is substantial. He would bring this experience and leadership to our town government. In many ways, Harwich is at a crossroad, and we don't have the luxury of someone getting their feet wet over the next couple of years. Leadership and competency now. Leo has the qualities and could make an immediate impact on our next town administrator. Our group would like to thank the Board of Selectmen for considering Leo Kukunis as a potential candidate for this important position. I have here copies of my statement and a list of Harwich residents that have signed on to ask you to consider Leo as our next town administrator. I have copies for all of you.
Thank you, Gary. Could you leave those with Joe now, and then he'll get to us? I will, to our Assistant Town Administrator, Joe.
I saw your point. I didn't quite hear what you said.
Gary, in response to your initial statements, we certainly appreciate that, and there will be an open process, and including both looking at a committee to a search committee, probably hiring a temporary town administrator for a short period going forward. We're not to the point of considering Mr. Kukunis or anyone at this point. It'll be an open process once we go through the interviews, the process, and hopefully we'll come back with several outstanding candidates, and we'll go from there. And then you'll have a chance, everyone will have a chance to be heard. Anyone else for public comment or announcement? I just have one short announcement. We've been invited to, let me say it differently. Brack's Landing, a restaurant, is hosting the Lieutenant Governor and other officials tomorrow at 1 o'clock. They're the recipient of a grant award after the tornado to help rebuild their business, and there'll be a ceremony recognizing that. I've been offered, and we're going to take the chance to speak to thank the normal support we have from both in town and all the other federal and state agencies that helped out, and we appreciate it. It was part of the Norm's looking at me, but I think as we recall, the governor almost immediately after the tornado authorized a $1 million emergency grant loan, and this is part of that. They got part of that funding to help rebuild their business. And Brack's is important to us, so that was nice. And that'll be tomorrow at Brack's at, I guess they're gathering at 1 and it'll start at 1:30. Anyone else? If not, we'll move then to this time for consent agenda.
Consent agenda, vote to approve Caleb Chase Fund request in the amount of $800.
Second.
Any comment? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We have no public hearings, so next is new business. We're looking at several annual meetings to the board. The first is Community Preservation Committee, and Mr. Dave Nixon. I hope that's not a flak jacket. We're okay, aren't we?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You can't see me here. There's a couple of things. You have my information in front of you. I'm going to hit these parts of it because these are really important. We need one more member, and that would be a selectman's appointee. That's one thing we're down. In 2019, the committee received 15 applications totaling $3.691593. You might want to write those numbers down because things are going to change. The 15 applications are being presented and will be reviewed and deliberated by the committee. There's a grand total of approximately $3,504,551 available for distribution. Now, you understand what that number means. There's a different issue that's come up, and I want to explain this to the newest member of the board because the other board members I've always said to you when I present numbers to you, they change. So I'd like to read something I just got from the state. This is an update for the November statewide CPC fund distribution. The coalition has obtained primary information regarding the year's Community Preservation Trust Fund distribution to the CPC municipalities. However, this year's distribution and information that accompanies it will be quite different than in the previous years for two reasons. The Department of Revenue has not posted any data information on this match. Have been issued to any of the CPC communities. The second part of this is there's still a potential for an additional $20 million in the budget plus funds that would be distributed by CPC at a later date. Now, none of us, as we went through this planning, knew this was coming. It constantly changes. So I gave you a number here for the 15 applications totaling $3,691,593. 1.2 of that, 1.2 million of that money has been taken off the table. There has been an application that's been withdrawn. That, I'm not gonna name the type of application or what our discussion was on it until those, the office, Anita's office, the clerk's office. So it's not official, but it's there. And I was hoping Carol could make this tonight, but Carol and I had a very lively conversation about the next thing.
David,
Go ahead.
is the debt payment included in that number?
I'm not gonna tell you that, Larry, until I confirm that. All this is new information. I have no idea how much these numbers are gonna change right now.
Okay.
So let me get that information. I'll get that to the chair, and the chair can get that to the committee. On October 17th, 2019, the committee successfully rescinded and closed out previous funding articles that were either completed, uncompleted for many years of non-activity in the amount of $129,904.69. The monies would be returned to the prospective funds. When I wrote this, that's the way it was considered. Carol just got some information from DOR. That 129 is considered in this total number that I gave you originally. We're not going to be allowed to use that. It's the process it's the process DOR has of looking at money in general. These funds are vetted through CPC, they go to you, they go to town meeting, they're approved. So they get distributed to the applicants. Sometimes the applicants don't use all the money, they bring it back. Now DOR says you have to consider that as new monies. So it has to be recertified and go through that process again.
So to clarify, Dave, is we can use it, but not till the following year.
Not till the following year, which in the past, we have used it. So, that's the next part of the equation that changes. If you do, I don't want to do the numbers out loud. You pretty much got what I have. So, the only other things I'd like to say is I have a couple of members of my board here tonight. John Ketchum and Mary Meslowski. She's gonna kill me. Anyway, there's two people I'd like to acknowledge right now for former committee members. That's Chris Rocket and that's Kathy Green. And they were really helpful in my transition into the chair. The amount of information they had because of the years they had worked on this committee and others was invaluable. So, are there any questions from the board?
Questions for David that he might answer? Michael?
I just want to thank you, David. I know how much work you spend and the committee spends on CPC and the accuracy that you've brought to the numbers, and I appreciate it.
Yep.
And again, when this all gets worded out, I'll provide that information for
And
you
we'll
to
get it out.
provide to the board.
Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Now it's my turn, David. Actually, I want to compliment you and the committee. Not only have you put a lot of hard work in, but you had to impose some structure where there was none. The questions, the conduct of the meetings are extremely serious. Things have vastly improved over the past few years prior to you. And it's a tribute to you, and it's a tribute to the members. The way it operates, you've got that manual out now. It shows people how to approach the process. It's very transparent, and I really appreciate all the time and effort you've put into it.
The committee puts a lot of time, Dawn, into doing its work, and they provide a lot of help. There's a lot of knowledgeable people on it.
I think that's what I said.
I'm confirming that.
Well, thanks again. I think we all agree, good work. And let me just repeat what your one request. One more member.
Please.
So is
And that'll
anyone
make us,
watching
we'll have a
that,
full board for once.
we have an interview committee here. We'll be anxious to interview.
We'd have to have somebody to interview.
There's that. Thanks again, Dave.
You're welcome.
Thanks, David.
Golf Committee? I don't see anyone here from Golf Committee. Okay, we'll move on then to item B, which is a vote to designate Joe Powers as temporary town administrator for a period not to exceed.
Mr. Chair?
Yes. Steve?
I just want to ask a question. Is this necessary? I believe under the charter, it's automatic.
It was just getting the, we won't, just to confirm it.
Yeah, I mean, but
Yeah,
it,
We'll do it.
it's a given,
Has to
whether we
happen.
vote for this or not.
Right.
He's-
that's,
So I
think
don't,
that's true.
it seems like a step that,
okay, Don, or Ed, and then Don.
Make a motion that we appoint Joe Powers as acting temporary town administrator for a period not to exceed 90 days.
Second.
Second, Don?
And to Stephen's point, 4-10-2 says, and I quote, "The Board of Selectmen shall designate." So I mean, it does require us to designate somebody.
Any other, thank you, Steve and Don. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Congratulations, Joe, I think.
Thank you, I think, Mr. Chairman.
Moving to contracts. It's going to take some time. This was a heavy, heavy load, this Ways and Measures, which
So,
I'm happy that you know, and I guess, Mike, we have some experience in it, so we'll.
yeah, but
I'm sorry, do you want a comment?
Well, we are here from the town of Barnstable,
to present.
Okay,
plan if you'd like.
sure.
So,
Please, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, as he approaches, just let the board know that there is a material in your packet, a presentation to be done. However, the recommendation presently is that the board should not come to a conclusion on the agreement still being vetted by council and the finance director.
Okay,
But I can speak to that more later.
okay.
Thank you.
Please, look forward to your presentation.
Let me sit here.
You sure may?
Thank you. So, I am Richard Scally. I'm the licensing director, which includes the weight division for the town of Barnstable. For the last 20-plus years, Barnstable has provided weights and measures services for 9 towns on the Cape. Unfortunately, the agreements have not been reviewed in 20 years, believe it or not. So you'll see in the packet that we provided to you the agreement that was signed by the Board of Selectmen here in 2001. We have gone through a process over the last 2 years of reevaluating and looking at those agreements. Some of them had certain clauses where we were able to charge the towns for certain services, others did not. Harwich did have the option of us charging $2,000 a year plus an hourly rate above a certain number of hours. We now have come to a conclusion where we're going to have one agreement for all of the towns, and we've added Falmouth onto that process as well for their oil truck meters. So we provided to you a packet. I did provide a whole presentation to Mr. Clark in September, which took about an hour, so I won't take an hour of your time to do that. But I wanted to make sure you got the highlights of what that looks like. So in the packet, you'll see there is a list of all the services that we provide to each town. And it provides a number of devices, price verifications, package checking, oil tank meters, a number of other services as well. There is a brochure here in the packet which describes what that looks like. We pass that out to all of our Citizens Academy attendees and to all of the towns that look at all the businesses that work for all the towns as well. So basically, you'll see there we provide taxi meters, oil truck meters, and air eliminators, retail store scales, industrial scales, vehicle scales, gas station dispensers, marina pumps, cordage measures, store scanner systems, linear measures, wholesale fuel racks, and airport refuelers. Those are the items that we inspect. There is also a list in the packet of all the Harwich businesses that we have served over a number of years, and you'll see they're all listed by address and by location. There's also in the packet a list of our revenues for fiscal year 19 and calendar year 2018. And you'll see from the packet that basically we bring in about $18,000 in fees and about $8,000 in fines, for a total of about $25,000 to $26,000 a year. Obviously, that does not cover all of our expenses. The you, and you'll see here that there is a fiscal year 19 inspection results, and it gives you all of the inspections, whether they passed or failed, was sealed or not sealed, and the total fees that were collected by those businesses as well, which I told you totals about $18,000. In looking at our hours that we provide on a rough basis, it's very hard to determine actual hours because many of the inspections are non-fee based, so they're determined by violation, so it's very hard to figure out exactly how many hours you're going to provide. But there is a document in here that describes to you about 143 hours per year that we provide for Harwich by itself. The annual report we submit to the state every year is required to be submitted in January, and I forgot to actually introduce Jane Zelkevich, who is our sealer of weights and measures. She's the technical person, so if you have any technical questions, she is the person to ask in terms of any of the devices or other services. But she prepares this for you every year, and it describes exactly what we do. Jane is the sealer. She has 3 deputy inspectors as well as myself. We are all certified. We all have to have CEUs every year in terms of keeping up our certification. And most of our inspectors here, you'll see, are very experienced in 8 to 10 years experience and have been in our department that long. You'll see a list of our equipment that we provide for use for all of the towns. It's very extensive in terms of them being certified every year by the lab, which Jane and her staff take care of, and the lab is up in Needham, which we take them to the metrology lab every year, or every 1 to 5 years to do that. You will see also a item pricing summary listing exactly what we have done in Harwich in the year 2018. And then you'll see also a price verification summary as well, which gives you the numbers in terms of like how many sample counts we have done for each. We also are required by law through the state to process an amount saved by consumers and an amount saved by merchants. So you'll see it's an impact statement that we provide to the state every year, showing a savings to the consumers of about $46,000 a year by the adjustments that we made, and about $28,000 to businesses out there in Harwich in particular. So there is a benefit to both sides, the consumer and to the businesses as well. We provided to you also 2 sample copies of our complaints. It's our citizen request management system that we have complaints go into the system. And you'll see there's one with regards to a gas station and one with regards to Somewood products, just as a sample in terms of how we process complaints and make sure that we react to those within 24 to 48 hours. And Jane and her staff do that to make sure people are in terms of what their problems are with any particular purchase that they've made. There is also a copy of an invoice that we put in here. Jane has a very extensive website that she uses and an extensive data system that we've designed through our IT system. Explains and calculates and puts all the reports and information in there, and she maintains that with her staff as well. There's also a commodity worksheet if you wanted to look at in terms of like by commodity. We determine by commodities the amount of savings that are on those as well. We also process package checking by commodity, and you'll see by the different categories what commodities we have checked and the numbers and the amount of savings on those as well. There's also a UPC inspection report, and that's also in the package. And the last part is really kind of the most important part. It is the chart that we have put together from our revolving fund. Our finance department and our legal department and ourselves worked on this for about a year. And it determines all of our revenues and all of our expenses. And you'll see that over the last few years, we have run in a deficit in terms of how we're operating. Obviously, the most expensive costs are our personnel costs. These costs do include a retirement as well. Our operating costs are about $25,000 a year for just general expenses, maintenance, repairs, postage, paper, all those kind of things. So that's not a very heavy operating cost for those. The chart will show you that this year we're running about a $37,000 deficit with regards to the process. And now we are calculating in retirement and trying to calculate in the replacement of equipment. Our trucks are 2008 and 2009, and so we're at the point now where we need to replace those, and we need to build up funding to be able to do that. So in order to come up with a number, we have looked at by the number of devices for each town that we serve. So at Harwich, this year, or the last year, actually, we had 253 devices. We have a total of about 3,900 devices that we serve throughout the 10 towns. And we divided that up by what we need to bring in to make up for the deficit, to make up for the retirement, and to make up for the equipment replacement. That number comes to about $12,300 that Harwich would put in this coming fiscal year 21. And then we've added a clause of 2.5% just as a number for cost of living in the next upcoming years. So the proposal actually is for a new agreement. It would be a 3-year agreement, automatically renewable for a year, and reviewed after 3 years with an automatic escalator after that to be able to do that. It would be reviewed for the 3 years to make sure that everything's in place and everything is satisfactory to both parties. I have provided a copy of the actual agreement and gone back and forth with Chris about that. Originally, the agreement was proposed to be signed by the town administrator, and then I was told that they would prefer that it would be the Board of Selectmen that signed this agreement. So we would have to probably amend the front page of that as well to make that adhere to that, if that's indeed what you want to do.
Let me excuse you, I think you have a clarifying
Yeah, could you
question,
just
Michael?
clarify the 3-year with the auto renew? Is it 3 years with an auto renew for 3 years, for an auto renew for 3 years?
It would, unless there was something else you proposed that wanted to change after the 3, we would do an automatic renewal every year for up to 3 years, and then do a complete review after 3 years of the agreement. We wouldn't necessarily have to re-sign the agreement, but we would just automatically.
So how long is the term of the whole agreement?
It cannot exceed 25 years.
25 years?
Mhm.
Wow. All right, if you could, the agreement amount, it shows on a chart you have 18,000 collected in fees and 7,800 in fines,
Mhm.
for a total of 25,000. Is that in addition to what you're asking for in the agreement?
Yes.
You get that in addition
You
to?
still would keep the revenue, the revenue that would be, yeah.
Okay. If I can,
Go ahead,
can I
Michael, yeah,
continue?
follow.
What are the towns that don't use you? Who do they use?
Well, we represent everybody from Bourne all the way down to Chatham.
So you represent, you said 9 towns.
That-
Who represents the other towns?
They either have their own sealer of weights and measures, or those that are under a population of 5,000 have the state do their sealing of weights.
So do we as a town have an option to use the state if we choose?
You do not at this point, yes.
So we have to use you?
No,
Or
you could,
have our own.
or come up with your own program.
Okay. Now, as a business owner, you frequent my shop, I think it's once a year, and you charge me.
For the device, for sealing of any device.
Yes. So we're gonna pay you, and the consumer's gonna pay you? The business is gonna pay you?
The business would pay the fee that we charge for the sealing of the devices,
Yep.
and then the town would contribute this amount of money to the expenses for the cost of our services.
So the town contributes,
Mhm.
and then you offset that by charging the business owner.
The business owner would pay the fee for the services, yes, for the
So
sealing.
it's a double charge, not really a double charge, but you're getting a certain amount from the town,
Correct.
and then you're getting a certain amount from the business owner.
Right. The other option would be to increase the fees, but that would put a bigger burden on the business owners, and we were trying to avoid doing that.
So the town paying this is a service to the businesses.
Correct.
That's it for now.
Okay. Continue. Thank you for that.
Sure. As I was saying with the agreement, I believe you said you wanted to look at, legal counsel would need to review that. I think you're represented by KP in terms of your legal
Right,
counsel.
correct.
He's already actually made some comments to the other towns with regards to some other clauses in there, so I'm sure you'll get those comments from KP.
Yeah, if I
Okay,
could, Mr.
Joe,
Chairman, I
yeah.
do have some updates. Most concerning to council and staff, this is an intermunicipal agreement regulated by Chapter 40, Section 4A. And as you've mentioned, Richard, has had a long practice where intermunicipal agreements are signed by the full board rather than just the administrator. It's exempt from procurement, so the dollar amount's not coming into play. But beyond some concerns that the finance director and I have with the escalator clause, and really the indemnity clause under item 4 of section 3 tends to negate the whole purpose of the actual statute that it's written under. So council's direction was, he's still working on it, but he would implore the board not to sign in this condition, and I would agree with that. It appears that the way it reads is that if the town of Harwich were to be a party to this agreement as written, town of Barnstable is indemnified. We're indemnified, except that we're responsible for everybody. So it's problematic at present. I wouldn't suggest that we couldn't come to an agreement, but there's some more work, I think, that needs to be done before the board would be offered a recommendation to sign at this point.
You're suggesting you bring it back in December 2nd or later? How much time do you-
We can certainly have something come back on December 2nd. Finance this week, council should get back to me next week
Okay.
at the latest.
Okay. Michael?
How many other towns have voted this already?
All of the towns have accepted it, but they're in the same stage you are right now with looking at the details of the agreement.
Okay.
So all have signed, saying that they want the service. It's
But they
just-
haven't signed the final contract?
No, no. They're all in the same boat, trying to have their town Board of Selectmen vote the authority for the town administrator to
Okay.
sign for them.
Michael, you had another follow-up?
I guess the only other follow-up is after 3 years, if we review it, and we say we don't want to pay it anymore, we can opt out? Because I don't understand why you're going for 25.
That's the legal requirement under the statute,
Okay, thank you.
under 44A. Yeah. And there also is a clause in there too that with 90 days' notice, either party could cancel.
Okay.
So,
At any time.
Who pays the deficit now? Is that Barnstable?
we do, yeah. Town of Barnstable's been paying
Thank
it
you.
the last 2 years.
Yeah.
We,
Yeah,
I'll
I agree
tell
with
you,
Michael, thank you.
you also should know that we did have the option to bill you for the last 20 years,
Oh, you do?
but we have not.
Good.
So
We'll be
About this-
friendly then.
think about the savings. For the last 20 years, we have not billed you, so.
Okay. Say, Ed?
Yeah, I guess in the financial information that you presented really is only for the town of Harwich, the revenues.
Well, I have all the other towns as well, but the
Yeah.
chart explains each town's portion of what they would contribute and how many devices they have. If you look at the last page of the chart,
It's
it
page
explains
60
every town's
61 on your
contribution.
website, I think.
Okay, well, I guess I would like to basically see the financials of what the entire service costs, sort of through all of the towns that you do.
That's what the chart explains.
Okay, I don't
The
see that
total.
chart.
It's the very last document.
Ed, is,
It explains our total costs.
If you look here.
That was put together by our finance department.
Yeah, Steve?
Are there any other entities like yourself besides the state?
There's, Jane can, there's probably one.
No,
Yeah.
we're pretty an anomaly there. Each town is over 5,000 are obligated to have their own weights and measures sealer. State covers everyone under 5,000. Um, Towns have had the option to sign on with the state as a contract and a fee, but they have found they've been in a little bit over their heads, so they are not accepting any more towns.
The state has?
Correct.
That's the 5,000 and under, or that's?
No, that's the
Over.
5,000 to 20,000. That was their cap.
They have been allowed in the past?
They
too?
have been, but they are looking to remove 17 to 20 towns from their obligation in this next year, because they can't keep up. So each of those communities are gonna have to hire their own sealer. And I think we're just unique because we're on the Cape, and we've been doing this so long that we just were able to take on these other towns and make a program. A lot of towns are just, the weights and measures is a part-time building inspector, health inspector, zoning.
Is the state losing money to them?
Well,
So you guys are losing money, and the state's losing money?
well,
Yoink.
The state just appointed a new director. The director that had been there before was there for 38 years. So there's a new director and there's a new boss, and they're asking for a complete overhaul of the system.
Yeah.
Nothing is computerized, nothing is in the system, so
Yeah.
it's a complete overhaul, so.
Yeah. Thank you.
Steve?
That's it.
Michael?
Briefly, for the people watching, if there's anyone watching or the people that are here, will you just say what you do and why? It's really a consumer protection mechanism.
It is.
Can you just explain briefly scales and why?
I'm gonna let Jane do that, because she does it better than I do, so.
well, we are obligated to ensure the interests of both the consumer and the merchants to make an equal playing field, equity in the marketplace. So with that comes, back in the 1700s, John Adams figured this was a needed thing, with people getting ripped off with their exchanges were not being equal. So fast forward now, we ensure that all the scales in the supermarkets, the fish markets, the truck scales that you bring your load of demolition over the transfer station, the pharmacy scales, so make sure your medicine is being weighed appropriately, the jewelry scale, so your precious metals and gems are being weighed correctly, and they're accurate. Mainly that we're there to test to make sure they're accurate. And there's a tolerance, and there's a whole mathematical equation that we do, and we ensure that they're correct and accurate in the marketplace.
And gas pumps.
Just to
Gas
fo-
pumps as well.
Yeah, just to follow up on the gas pumps, if you did a gas station in the town of Harwich and it wasn't correct, what happens other than the fine and the penalty? Do you, or do they have to hire somebody?
Okay, if we find a meter is out of tolerance, we are all trained or knowledgeable to adjust these devices. Many towns charge an adjustment fee, provided the inspector is knowledgeable, because we don't want to make that device worse for the merchant. So we make sure when we adjust it, we test it again, and we make sure we're able to put it back into service, so the merchant doesn't have to call a service technician, which there are none on the Cape. So they have to come essentially from Rhode Island or New Hampshire. So we're able to get it back into service. We like to think we're accommodating the merchant and making his inspection complete at that time.
Michael?
Just to close with, your inspectors that have been out to my businesses have been great, very polite. They have found mistakes, they have fixed the mistakes. We're not selling anything with our scales, just people exaggerating the size of their fish.
Yeah.
But they have been very polite, very helpful,
Okay.
and
That's good to hear.
on point.
That's great.
We will put this on the agenda for December 12th now. Do you wish to be here at that meeting as well, then?
If you'd like us to be here, we certainly can do that, or we can work through legal counsel, whatever you prefer.
Why don't we hold off on that and see, Joe, what,
December 2nd?
December 2nd? If it's okay with, we'll put that in abeyance till we hear from legal counsel and see how secure we feel.
Sure.
Maybe it's so straightforward that we'll need further input.
Through our legal counsel, I'm sure we can come to some agreement from what I've heard already.
Michael?
I guess, and then with that said, when does this go into effect?
So this agreement is for fiscal year '21, so it would start July 1st. Some of the towns, however, Mashpee, Yarmouth, and Dennis, have agreed to contribute to the deficit for fiscal year '20, and we figured out a proportionate amount to do that. I'm actually appearing before Yarmouth Board of Selectmen tomorrow night to talk about that. So if you're willing to
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Next on the contract is B is change of order number 8 for fire station number 2. I guess Joe and then Noah.
So, Mr. Chairman, the fire chief has submitted this. Staff has reviewed it. The finance director has confirmed funding, and we would recommend that the board authorize the chair to sign said order.
Michael?
I move that we approve change order number 8 for Fire Station 2 in the amount of $18,040.66.
Second?
Second.
Discussion here, Joe, you want, or Lauren, you want
If I could give you, the board and the folks at home, a quick explanation as to why there's an $18,000 change order on this. When we first started out with this project, we were faced with our own independent septic system, and Megan Eldridge worked with us to, in the Board of Health, to allow us not to have to put in a very expensive septic system standalone, because we knew sewer was coming at some point. Granted, now we're backing up here a couple of years, but we knew it was coming. So, working with the health department, we were able to reuse or continue to use the Title V that's at the present Station 2. Even when that building comes down, we'll need to use that old Title V until the sewer goes in. The reason this change order came about is because when I looked at the details of what happens afterwards, it called for a forced main from the present station up over through the property out to the sewer connection on Route 137. And that made absolutely no sense to me, where we could gravity feed to the front on Route 39. So that caused a change, and that's what this is going to pay for. It's going to pay for the removal of equipment, removal of pumps, and we've already installed our stub. We're ready to go. So that 18,000 gets us to the side of the street, and going forward, I'm hoping to see the new station on some of the designs sooner than later, because we are there, so that the sewer, the engineers with CDM Smith and Robert Auer can change the connection on Route 137 and add the connection on Route 39.
Norm, have you had an opportunity to have an input into the design in their meetings, or this is?
Well, in fairness to everybody, we've all had an opportunity. And I neglected to go to the sewer meetings, and but I picked up on it, and I felt this was appropriate to change to a forced system to a gravity system. What I have done is met with Robert Auer Company, with their engineers, who said that they would reach out to CDM Smith to re-engineer that little stub. They need a little piece of pipe to go beyond where they go into Stop and Shop. And that's on the septic project to do. But there will be changes or credits that we'll find on Route 137 that can be applied to Route 39.
Thank you, Norm. Michael, you?
Just one comment. I appreciate the now acting town administrator putting the memo together, and I appreciate Carol Capola's signature on the amount of money requested.
Thank you, Norm. Any discussion further? Anyone from the audience? If not, I'll entertain we'll vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous, Joe, so thank you, Norm.
One last comment, Mr. Chairman, if I may. A week from Saturday at 10 in the morning, we will have a ribbon cutting for that station. We're under the gun to get to that point. We won't be pulling fire trucks in after everybody leaves, but we'll be very close to, within a very short period of time of literally moving in. But the station will be in such a condition, without trucks in it, people in it, to show the folks paid for.
Norm, before I offer congratulations, anything of that kind, you're ahead of schedule, is that correct?
No. No, we're not ahead of schedule, but we're certainly within budget and hopefully going to come in under budget.
That matters. That's enough for me. Thank you, Norm.
Thanks, Norm.
Old business, vote to endorse the CPC agreement for Cape Housing Institute. Both the CPC articles came up to us, I think, last week, and we want additional information. I think has been provided in the packet. Michael, you first, and then Ed.
I move that we endorse CPC agreement for Cape Housing Institute in the amount of $7,500.
Second. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just
Sure.
so the board knows, the agreement's going to be between the town and Community Development Partnership Housing Institute, and that language change has been made.
Good. Any more discussion? If not, all in favor, aye. We'll go to the second one. Michael, you again?
Thank you for the explanation. I think the explanation's in the
put it in
packet,
there,
but
yeah.
last week it wasn't. There was really no explanation in the packet, so thank you for that.
Mr. Chair?
Ed?
We didn't vote that, did we?
We did.
Aye.
Aye.
I knew Larry voted, but I didn't vote.
That's
Okay.
Ed?
So we need to vote for item B.
Yes.
Move that we vote to endorse CPC agreement for Habitat for Humanity in the amount of $300,000.
Second. Second. Any discussion? And again, David, that was the first one. We appreciate your taking your time to explain this to us. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Passed. New business is vote to approve the wastewater consulting agreement with DHY. In summary, the three towns involved with DHY have agreed to hire a Weston & Sampson as an independent review of the finances and operation. We've done this partially because of our experience here in Harwich, wanting to know another check on what the finances are. The total bill from Weston & Sampson's $18,000. Our portion of that's $6,000. Do you have any other comments?
Just that since I produced the memo on Friday for the board, council's in the process of vetting it. However, he was working on the assumption that the original agreement wasn't from us. In fact, council was the one that worked on the original agreement. The amendment doesn't pose any conflicts to the original agreement, so there's no concern there. Council hasn't finished, however, the finance director has confirmed the funding that's available, and I would recommend that the board approve, as we don't expect any objections from council. If the board were approved this evening and I hear from council to the contrary, I would inform the board before we finally executed it.
Had a discussion. This, to restate, this is to be more cautious than we have before, that we have everything in order in the independent review of the finances in the operation. And the other towns have signed it, have moved ahead, as I remember, so. Michael?
Only question I have, you just mentioned Carol said where the money was coming from.
She has. She's made reference to the fact that it would be the Sewer Enterprise Fund from this year's annual town meeting. The original appropriation for that was $125,000. The two towns, Dennis and Yarmouth, have confirmed their funding, and the finance director will be billing them upon execution of the contract, so that the net payout by the town of Harwich is $6,000.
Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'm not going to argue using those funds for this purpose, but in the future, we had actually set aside that because we know we're going to be upside down in the sewer enterprise fund in the early years.
Right.
So I would
We gotta be
suggest
really
we keep
cautious.
doing this
We
kind
gotta
of
be very
thing.
cautious. In fact, Gil and I just had this discussion coming into this meeting.
But owing to the amount, I'm not going to object to it. It's a good idea to have a peer review.
Michael,
What is the amount?
6,000? I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the agreement with Weston and Sampson for wastewater consulting services on the DHY third-party wastewater project reviews.
Second.
In the amount of?
The amount of 6,000.
6,000.
If I may, it reads as 18,000 because we'll be seeking reimbursements. To be accurate, it would be 18,000. That's what the terms are.
Okay.
That's only because there has to be someone sign the contract with Weston Sampson, so they've already voted to pay us back the money.
For the 18, I was second.
Somebody's got to hold the bet.
Exactly. Any other discussion? Anyone from the audience?
Sharon Flieger. I have a question. At the DHY meeting that we had, not this past Thursday, the one before, they brought up something about what you guys were going to be voting on the beginning of December, which was the agreement for DHY. Is that correct?
It is, but we've now decided to postpone that discussion until January,
Okay.
because we want this information as part of that data flow for our discussion. And that's why we're trying to move this ahead to get that review started and completed
All right.
by the end of December.
Okay, so I realize December, oh, you said by the end of, the end of December is what you're saying. So when would you expect to have meetings with the town about the DHY? Because at the last one, we talked about the extension of the area that it could cover. And, you know, here we are, we're going to be asking Weston and Sampson to review this financially when we don't even, based on what I gathered from last Thursday, we don't even know what areas we're going to cover yet.
Right. And that will, that confirmatory information of how much money we have available going forward. So that's a continuing discussion, Sharon.
All right, all right. So we will be having further
We'll be having
meetings?
further discussion, certainly.
All right, okay, thank you.
Don?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's also important to note, though, regardless of what the scope of the work is, A, we have to approve, each of the three towns has to approve whatever that deal is, and B, this is to have somebody looking over the engineer, in this case CDM Smith, who presented the agreement and codified it to each of the three towns. It gives an opportunity for another set of eyes from another company to review those figures to make sure, whatever the scope is, that there's accurate figures that are being presented to the town.
I have another question. Okay, this is playing the, Sharon Flieger again. This is playing the devil's advocate. Okay, so I guess our board was the one that asked Weston and Sampson to take a look at this, or was it all three towns?
All three towns,
The whole organization.
All right,
yes.
so I guess my question is, would we really expect one engineering firm to contradict a second engineering firm within the same area? Valid, do we really feel this would be? I guess I'm a little queasy on this.
Well, a little cynicism's always warranted, Sharon. I think other towns have used a review successfully. I know Chatham did on their finances early on, had another person come in and question some factors that prompted additional discussions. And
So you
I-
do feel that they would be forthcoming and saying, I think something is out of whack?
There's, I don't, yeah.
All right. All right, thank you.
I mean, with some cynicism, but we'll be looking at that.
Okay.
Any other discussion? If not, town administrator's report? Joe?
Was there a vote on that last night? I apologize.
We didn't vote yet.
We didn't vote. I never voted.
The motion was for the 18,000.
Let's go ahead and vote.
I
But
second.
just a comment on Sharon's last question in the whole process of the building committee for the Monomoy High School in HVAC. In the septic system, we brought in a second engineer to evaluate it, and they were very, very critical of the work that others had done. Yeah, no. They do.
Okay. All in favor?
All right.
Unanimous? Joe, you have any other?
Very briefly, Mr. Chairman, under Town Administrator Report, two items. First, I was advised by the town planner today. She's following up on a memo that was circulated back in late October regarding the Harwich Local Comprehensive Plan, specifically looking for the board, and we can add it to a future agenda, obviously, Mr. Chairman, to designate a local planning committee. It is true that the planning board could be named, but the town planner is requesting that we consider a specially designated committee drawing from a number of different boards and committees throughout the town. And I think there's merit to that, so if we wanted to talk about it at a future meeting.
Please.
And then lastly, we were discussing before, but I just wanted to advise the board that Danielle Delaney in our office has been working on the annual license renewal process. All of the liquor license establishments received their notice on November 1st for renewal, which is required for them to get the forms back to us by November 30th. She's also working on all the other annual licenses coming up for renewals, and I'll have more information at our meeting tomorrow, Mr. Chairman, but we're looking to start the voting process as early as December 2nd. So we're progressing on those well.
And the deadline to complete that is the end of the year?
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yep,
So we
yep.
have months.
We would, we expect to be able to complete everything by your last meeting on the 23rd, but certainly before then if possible.
Is the intent to bring that to us all at once, or will you? bring it to
We're
us?
trying to space them out. We
Go
could actually accomplish perhaps one or two next week. I'd rather start in December if that's okay.
I think since this is new process, we'd be more comfortable if it were brought to us in pieces rather than all at once, so we have a chance to review it.
Yeah, we'll have plenty of content starting on the 2nd.
Okay, thank you, Joe.
Thank you. That was it.
Don?
Selectmen's report.
Selectmen's report?
Stephen and I were up on Thursday at the county where the Cape Cod Commission took up the issue of the District of Critical Planning Concern for Captain's Row in West Harwich, and pleased to say that they unanimously voted to refer the issue with a positive recommendation to the Assembly of Delegates.
And when will they meet?
No, I don't know what the timeframe is.
I know it's at their next meeting, I just,
We'll be informed.
And who takes the charge after that? Is it the planning committee to?
it goes back to the planning board, and they have to promulgate regulations under the aegis of what gets referred out of the Assembly.
And they give us a lot of support, the commission.
Yeah, it's been a terrific process.
Thank you, Don. Ed, seconds?
Yeah, just two announcements. One, remind people that on this Thursday, the 22nd, at Monomoy Regional High School at 7:30, the Harwich Cranberry Festival is sponsoring a concert featuring a group called Child's Play. It's an assortment of different violin and stringed instrument music, everything from Irish and Scottish to Appalachian bluegrass to classical violin pieces, all featuring all the performers, and I believe there's 18 plus Irish step dancer and a singer, but all the musicians will be playing on instruments that were handpicked by Robert Childs, who will be leading the ensemble. And then on the 30th of November, the Saturday after Thanksgiving, the Lower Cape Eastham Club will be holding a after Thanksgiving community market at the gymnasium at the community center. And we have 50 different local folks who are there. Some are artisans or craftspeople. Others have antiques and sort of unique flea market items. The Kiwanis Club itself will have a variety of sort of, I guess you call a flea market. And then the Monomoy Regional High School Key Club will be sponsoring a bake sale table with holiday goodies. So we encourage you to come. The profits from both of these endeavors go to organizations' scholarship programs.
Thank you, Ed. Michael?
Just two follow-ups, if we could. 3 weeks ago or so, we were presented with a list of 40 items. Some were completed, some were partially completed. The board at the time was asked to prioritize them.
Yeah.
We gave them back to administration to prioritize and bring back to us. So if we could get an update on where we stand with that
On the
list.
procurement items.
Right. And the Noise Containment Committee is getting ready to request a date to come before us to give us an update on where they are. One important piece that they're missing is the
Steve?
The only thing I'd just mention as a result of the meeting that the commission had is I think it's becoming more and more clear that we need to address overall town planning more now than we have ever had to before. I mean, when we look at Harwich Center, we look at some of the issues in Harwich Port, all of our villages. So I think it just begs the issue that we need to focus more on that. So.
I couldn't agree more. Just to make a tie-in between that and sewering, for instance. With our land use policy, the number of properties we can sewer is based on a build-out number. So it's not status. We can add, more developments, more building, but there's a total. So we do it's a zero-sum game. So if we do something here, it may prevent us from doing something else in the future. So we need this long-term plan to help guide us of where we're going. Otherwise, the danger is we'll take first come, first serve to our detriment.
Exactly.
So the sooner we can get that going and have a serious discussion and allow resident participation, the stronger we'll be.
Right.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you.
motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Michael, hang on to that.
Aye.
So you have to-